Hi, this is Swapnil Bharti and we are here at VMware today in Las Vegas, and we have with us Dirk again. It's nice meeting you, and we should meet on weekly basis, right?
I think weekly is a little overdoing. On the other hand, I'll meet you again later next week, this week in Vancouver. So yeah, it feels like it. But it's good. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, it's been long since
I think it was March.
Open Source Leadership Summit in March. Yeah, it was good. So tell us, it's been like, I think 4 or 5 months. How much open source VMware has done in all these 5 months?
I think it's growing quite a bit. I think you can see more and more engagement in the large projects, and you can see that our engagement, not only in third-party projects, but also with our own projects, continues to grow. We've had some really interesting news in the last few weeks. Project Harbor is now a sandbox project with the Cloud Native Foundation. So this is once again a project that started VMware and that we donated to the Linux Foundation, to the CNCF, as a project that has now become so much part of the core infrastructure in Cloud Native that it truly is a community project, and it should migrate to being just that, which is why we donated it. Other projects that we've been doing for a while continue to grow and continue to create more traction in the industry. And of course, we keep creating new projects. Today we announced Project Concord, so an infrastructure to do a consensus algorithm in blockchains, specifically here in permission-based blockchains, so where you have control about the participants. And to us, this is all about creating infrastructure that the industry as a whole can collaborate on. And this is under the Apache v2 license to really promote this collaboration and create a shared basis for different companies to create products and services on top of one, but something that is shared across the industry, developed together, and understood as an open source underpinning under what we do and what a lot of other companies do in this space. And this very much flows along the line of many other projects that we have done. And to me, it's kind of interesting that so many of the things that we do seem to be kind of what people see at the edges of what they would expect out of VMware. I know you and I talked about Project Clarity and the open source design system that we open sourced a year and a half ago that has been massively successful. And if you think of VMware, you may not think of a design system, right? And the same goes for blockchain. I don't think a lot of people have us in that category, yet we've done a ton of research there over the time. And we see this as one of the segments where there is massive demand in the industry.
So if you look at VMware, you're part of a big family now. Dell is there, EMC is there, Pivotal is there. And when it comes to open source, is there any kind of synchronization across all these organizations? Or you work
so this is kind of funny. Dell Technology is indeed the largest shareholder of VMware, but we are an independent, publicly traded company. So most everything that we do with these companies is actually at arm's length. So we don't act as a single large company. We are a family of companies that have shared interests, that have certainly a shared large shareholder, but we are an independent company. So what we do from an open source perspective, be it the compliance tooling, be it our internal policies of how we engage with open source projects, be it the projects that we create ourselves, we are all independent entities, and while we talk at times, there is no coordination, there is no supervisory relationship in any way, shape, or form. This is all things that we do as our own, as VMware.
Right. You mentioned 2 projects, Concord and Harbor. How do you decide that, okay, this is a project we should keep as an open source VMware project versus donating it outside? What are the factors that contributes to that?
I think that typically the biggest factors are how much is this a project that is driven by a community that extends beyond VMware? How much is this used not just by us, but by our customers, by our partners, by a large subset of the ecosystem? And of course, is there a natural place for it to go? And that is often one of the challenges. You may have a project that has a lot of collaboration around this, but there isn't an easy home. And the last thing we need in this industry is another open source foundation. And so to me, when I can identify a logical place for a project and the project has reached that stage where it clearly is a community project, absolutely, I will support this idea. And with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and Harbor, that seemed like a perfect fit. We have other projects where I think we are approaching this stage where it's a lot less clear where they would go. And so then the decision becomes a lot harder. But to me, this is one possible outcome, and it's not necessarily the outcome that I say, oh, this is what we need to be working towards. Right. Because a lot of projects, if you look at this switch from being a company-owned project to a project that is hosted in a foundation, you will see a lot of instances where in this transition something bad happens and the projects kind of stall. And obviously I will make myself very popular by doing this, but let's look at an example, OpenOffice, right? So Star Office gets acquired by Sun, turns into OpenOffice, gets handed to the Apache Software Foundation, and somewhere in this process something broke. And that's where LibreOffice comes from, because the community ended up forking it and saying, no, we want to do this differently. So it's not always the desired outcome. Right. And you have to make sure that you do what's in the best interest of both the users of this project, but also the community that contributes to the project.
You said that, that sometimes there is a dilemma where to go, but at the same time, you also said that, it's driven by the feedback from the community. But at that same time, community may also help, which is the natural place. With the LibreOffice case, the Oracle kind of ignored what the community wanted, and they went with the Apache Foundation, and that's what led to. But in your case, when you have a community, you're already interacting with them. And I think these days, the natural home for all the projects is Linux Foundation. So what role community plays in deciding what is the home?
So obviously I'm biased. I'm on the board of the Linux Foundation, as
I think we're all biased, right?
I'm a huge fan of the Linux Foundation. I think in very many cases that may be a good place to go. But again, it's a case-by-case decision, and you have to have a good fit of the way the community works, the way your own contribution, your own leadership in this space works. And if you have enough critical mass from other member companies to drive this forward. And there is always this temptation to overestimate the success that your project has in the community. Right. I mean, everyone looks at their own children and say, they're beautiful, they're successful, they're amazing. So it is always this dance between understanding where you are, where you want to be, how you get there, which is why I'm trying to push against this vision that this is the desired outcome.
Right.
I don't see this as a desired outcome. I see this as one very positive outcome. But I'm perfectly happy with other projects that have been hosted by companies for many, many years and have been very successful in that mode. There's nothing wrong with that either.
Right. Now, let's try to understand the processes VMware has in place to encourage developers either to consume no, I will not use the word consume, you corrected me last time, to use an open source or to contribute back, because there could be legal challenges, in way. So how do you ensure, what processes do you have? Can you talk about that?
So we look at this as inbound, using open source, outbound, contributing to open source. And we have a bunch of fairly simple processes that are implemented through internal web tools that we have and managed by program managers that help us make sure that whenever we use open source components or whenever we want to create our own projects or contribute to existing projects, that we simply go through this process, we get the approvals that we need, we make sure we understand the implications on IP, we get the buy-in by the business unit, for example, and we ensure that there is no license incompatibility. We have some licenses that we lean towards, that we typically tend up picking, but we always listen to what's in this ecosystem, what is the preferred license. If you play in the Ansible space, you typically do things under the GPL v2. If you play in the JavaScript space, you usually end up with the MIT license. If you want to engage in CNCF projects, very often you will end up with an Apache v2. So, listen to the ecosystem, understand what is the best fit. And then we have a review with the legal team, we have a review with the business unit, And typically the actual approval of the contribution or of the project or of the use go very, very swiftly. I always laugh that, especially when we create our own projects, reliably the longest segment of this whole process is picking a name and getting a name approved and picking a logo. Because every developer knows that they are brilliant designers and that they can draw fantastic logos.
Right.
And every designer looks at these logos and says, what were you thinking? And so there's always this entertaining interaction to get to a logo. And I will tell the story how the open source program office at VMware got its logo, because there was a little bit of a back and forth, and then I, as a brilliant designer, took a drawing app and drew a logo and sent a picture of that logo to the designers. And they said, Dirk, we promise you'll have a new logo tomorrow. Because they were so afraid that I would use the logo that I drew, which was horrendous. And it served its purpose. But yeah, this is the hardest part.
You could have picked anything from your underwater photography, but I think all those they're taken already, right?
See, this is the interview we should be doing, underwater photography.
Yeah, I'll be moving that, within just 1 minute. The process that you explained, it seems to be a very complicated process. It could also be what kind of contribution it is. It could be a very massive contribution to some big project, or it could be just like one patch. So your VMware developers, they have to go through this process every single time, or it could and without sharing too much about our internal infrastructure. It's open source. You can share everything.
But there's also there are legal liability
exactly,
issues here.
I'm just joking.
But so very fundamentally, you have to have an approval to contribute to a project. So a project gets added to the approved list.
Okay.
And this is something where we have. If we have legal concerns about IP, that's reviewed there. But then for the individual contribution, the developer themselves get to decide, is this a trivial contribution? So either it's so small that it wouldn't be copyrightable, or it's just a simple bug fix, it's just a couple of lines of code. It's something that is trivial, that doesn't fundamentally change the project, that isn't a massive new feature. And things like this are automatically approved.
Okay.
So once the project is approved, they're good. But then if they want to do a bigger contribution, if they want to add a new feature, if they want to make a significant change to the project, there is a contribution review that is typically very, very quick. I would say most of the cases under 24 hours.
Okay.
And 1 out of 50 goes to the IP lawyers and goes to the, gets a lot more involved, right, because suddenly there are concerns. Oh, this is too close to this over there. But the vast majority of reviews is really, really quick. And that is one of our focus. Our internal goal is to never slow down the engineers in their goal to contribute upstream.
Right. I was watching Keynote this morning, and there was a use of machine learning, deep learning in terms of security. Why don't you apply the same machine learning in the approval process? Because the licenses which are okay, the projects which are safe. So machine learning can take care, and it can be done in seconds.
Why do you assume that we're not doing this? So the tooling, indeed, the inbound tooling for use of components has a lot of automated processes in it that says, if the project falls into this type of license, if it comes from that type of topics, and if it's used this way, it's auto-approved.
Wow.
So there is a lot of typical use of open source components that are under unrestricted or permissive licenses that get auto-approved.
Awesome. So now switch the gears and talk about your hobby. Everybody knows, what you do.
I don't know.
So when you're not doing all this open source work, what do you do in free time?
So I spend a lot of time doing Taekwondo. And of course, I'm an avid scuba diver and photographer. And so I love taking pictures underwater.
Right. I don't know about Taekwondo, but do they also have the belt system?
Yes.
So which label are you on?
I'm a third dan black belt.
Okay, so how dangerous is that?
I don't know. I don't think I'm dangerous at all.
You're peaceful.
I am completely harmless.
Okay, so have you ever used your Taekwondo skills underwater?
No, I have not. I don't think so. Well, actually, no, I'll take this back. As part of Taekwondo, a lot of what you spend time on is flexibility. So the ability to actually, extend yourself. And one of the things that the Linus struggles with greatly when you do tech dive training, one of the things you have to be able to do is you have to be able to open your own tank and close it. And this is just a matter of flexibility, and Linus struggles with this to no end, whereas for me this is super easy. He keeps teasing me about that, the fact that I can reach the back of my...
So when he goes, like, does he need everybody sometimes, or he can go on his own?
Oh, he's a perfectly great diver. This is not something that you typically
But you have to
need.
learn to do that, there are certain
This
things.
is for tech dive training. So we are both certified Trimix divers, and we are both certified as dive masters, as tech divers. And one of the skills you have to showcase is that you're able, if you have a malfunction in one of your, if you have dual tanks, one of the malfunctions, you need to be able to turn it off.
Okay.
And for him, this was really, really hard. So he would be head down on the water so that the tank slides up, and then he would...
But he found a way, right?
He found a way, of course he did. Yeah.
So we should, I think at LinuxCon, we should have a big tank where you and Linus, do a keynote panel underwater.
So I can't remember which conference it was. I think it was the LinuxCon in Boston 6-7 years ago, where we were at the Boston Aquarium and Linus got to scuba dive in the aquarium.
In front of everybody?
Yeah.
Oh, that was awesome.
The party was at the aquarium and Linus was in the tank. That was awesome.
Awesome.
I didn't go into the tank. That was kind of sad, but okay.
Okay. Has there ever been any exciting, experience underwater that you still remember it, or you're like, this is the best moment I ever had?
Funny you should ask, because that is a typical question that I get. And I always tell people, how you decide what's your most exciting dive is actually really, really hard. And one of my most exciting dives was actually a dive with Linus. And it's a dive where we went to 14 feet.
Okay.
It was a sandy rubble bottom. We spent there 2 hours and hardly ever moved. We never got more than maybe 30 feet away from the pier. But we spent 2 hours watching an octopus hunt.
Oh, wow.
So there was a Pacific octopus, an Atlantic octopus out hunting for critters in the sand, a fish following him and trying, whenever the octopus was digging the sand, the fish would come in and try to get food out of the sand. And Linus and I was just following this octopus around, and both of my cameras ran out of battery, and we were 2 hours there, never moving much, just following that octopus. And one of the most exciting dives I've ever done. Just amazing. Right. They're such intelligent creatures.
They are. And has there ever been any scary dive that you're still scared, oh my God, that was the worst dive of my life?
Those are the ones you don't like to remember. There have been moments on dives that in the moment you think, this is not good. And since there is a high risk that my wife might be watching this interview,
you can say.
We were on a night dive where we were terribly badly briefed, where there was massive current and massive wind that wasn't in the briefing. And we come up from the dive and we are about a good quarter mile away from the boat with the waves and the wind coming towards us. And the boat is picking up divers on the other side, so they're not looking our way. We're trying to get their attention with the lights. And to us in the moment, it felt incredibly scary. What we didn't know was that another quarter mile this way was actually the hotel that we were staying at. And so if we had just stopped swimming, we would have gotten to the shore at our hotel and would have been perfectly fine. But at that moment, it's pitch black around you. You have no idea how you are. You think maybe the open Pacific is behind you,
right,
and the wind and the current is pushing you away from the boat. Yeah, that wasn't my favorite dive. Not my favorite.
So after that, have you started taking the precautions that, oh, this should... You never know.
This is something that's so hard to predict. We certainly are, especially on night dives, much more conscious of where's the boat. And in a situation like this, where the briefing basically says, there's a tiny bit of current, and you go down and there's a crazy current, today we would simply just abort. Okay. We would say, no, this is not it, and would go back up to the boat. Back then, this is very early on in our diving together. We didn't do that, but in hindsight, we should have.
Okay. Last question. You also do a lot of photography. What kind of cameras do you use?
I actually have a brand new camera. I have an Olympus EM1 Mark II. And I took it on my first dive trip last week in Hawaii. Very, very happy with the new camera. It's once again a Micro Four Thirds. I'm a huge mirrorless fan because you have smaller cameras.
Yeah, me
and
too.
Still,
all these are.
This is all mirrorless.
This one is full format, but these two are Micro Four Thirds.
Yeah, I love the Micro.
And you can
Four
see the
Thirds.
lens, how huge it is on the full frame camera.
And this is what I like about mine because it makes for a smaller housing.
Exactly.
It's easier to travel with, and it's easier to work with underwater. But yeah, so that's my equipment of choice. I keep looking at full frame equipment and then look at the size like, no, it's just not worth it.
Only problem with Micro Four Thirds is low light conditions. Other than that, they're rock.
Yeah, so getting good light to your subject, but underwater you always have that because you have so much color loss otherwise.
And underwater is totally different world either way. So
yeah.
Anyway, it was nice talking to you today, and hope we'll be meeting again in a week.
Yes,
Okay.
in less than a week, later this week.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Thank
Swapnil.
you.